The Max Verstappen record-breaking streak continues. Charles Leclerc's heartbreak streak continues. And Aston Martin has re-entered the chat. This is Into the Chicane, a Formula One podcast, the post-Brazilian Grand Prix edition. We're your host. I'm Channing Apodaca. That is Brandon Wood.
Yo.
My goodness. Interlagos continues to be
great.
The best track in F1.
If not one of the best, it's definitely.
When you say one of the best, who else do you think is even in that discussion?
I'm a sucker for Coda.
Coda's good.
Sucker for Monza's pretty cool.
All for different reasons.
Yeah.
I like Zandvoort too.
Yeah.
This year was kind of biased because it produced a little bit better racing under the new regulations, which is a good thing. Suzuka's good.
Yeah. Those are all great answers.
I'm kind of weirdly biased towards Baku for some reason, and I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know. I think it's the best street race of the year.
It's pretty amazing city. Just
that might be it. But like when you think about it, the racing, other than a couple straights and maybe a few corners, it doesn't
really lend to itself to.
Yeah, turn 2 into like the castle. You can kind of make a pass. Like I think Pierre Gasly's made a few good passes there. Mm-hmm. Anyways, Interlagos though reigns supreme. It's a track that it makes Formula One look like go-kart races. It's the most conducive track to Formula One racing as we know it today. It's the best. If they raced it 24 times a year, I think everybody would be happy. They should be racing it forwards, backwards, sprints, non-sprints. Every track built going forward should be based off of this. I'm serious.
I think it's cool to have a couple tracks on the schedule that are outside of this or maybe a little weird, have different characteristics. I don't think that every circuit should be the same or have the same types of corners and stuff like that. But
if it did, would you be upset?
Maybe not upset, but I would maybe be looking for some more variance in the tracks.
See, I think if we got used to the quality of racing that Interlagos produces and then they came out with, Monza or something completely different, we'd watch that race and be like, what the fuck is this shit? Yeah. Oh, cool. One really long straightaway. Cool. Yeah.
But I mean, when you're designing a car and you're looking at the entire schedule, you kind of have to make sacrifices in certain areas, and some teams try to.
I mean, that's what makes Formula One.
Yeah. So I think it would be pretty boring if all the tracks were like Interlagos. Although it doesn't mean that this is not an amazing track, but.
I don't know about boring, but either way, regardless, one hell of a race, and to do it on a sprint weekend, I think is the right way to do Interlagos. You get more racing, more exciting action, and that's exactly what Interlagos proved. Not just this year, last year, year before that, as always. So let's get into it. They had one practice session going into the weekend. Rain was imminent, right? Or not even imminent. I think it was like a 50 to 60% chance of rain by Friday morning.
Yeah,
for them. And then by the time qualies showed up, holy shit, things took a turn for the worse.
Yeah, I think there was like 8 minutes left in Q3 and saw a gigantic, just black storm.
Yeah.
Come over the circuit.
It looked like the scene in, you ever seen that movie Mortal Kombat Annihilation?
Years ago, yeah.
Do you remember? You probably don't. But there's a scene like when, I don't know, they open up the dimension to the underworld or wherever the Mortal Kombat tournament takes place. They're in like Malaysia on some temple.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like fast forward, all of a sudden black clouds roll in and it's like, oh,
yeah,
Mortal Kombat is on. And that's what it looked like. I remember looking away for a split second, going to the bathroom or something, and then coming back and it was pitch black in Sao Paulo. Mm-hmm. It was a trip. And then 30 minutes later, there was roofs blowing off of, tents, and the paddock was getting torn apart. You had people, like vendors, barely holding on to their giant things of Heineken.
Yeah, tons of rain. Everybody's soaked. Apparently, Sao Paulo was kind of a mess afterwards. A lot of people trying just to leave the circuit, having trouble. Trucks getting stuck and blocking roads, and it was just.
There was a giant tropical storm going on down there. Like I don't know if you saw it, but Acapulco got completely destroyed.
Oh, really? Yeah.
The city of Acapulco, yeah.
I thought that was earlier than that.
It was. I mean, it wasn't around the exact same time. It was probably about a week or so earlier than this, but it's the same storm front moving, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm no meteorologist, but I'm guessing it all has something to do with each other. Yeah. But crazy. Who was it that got caught out?
I think Lando
again
in qualifying. So he only started. What was it?
P9. P5.
P7. He qualified P7. Yeah. Started 6th because of let's see.
Oh, because of Leclerc.
No, let's see. Who was it that got? So you got Matt. So here's the qualifying. You got Max, Charles, Lance, Fernando. Yeah, Lance Stroll qualifying in 3rd.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, in the wet, he had a little bit of a wet track to get that on, and he's just really good in the wet. So, but yeah, like
it's funny to say Lance Stroll really good at anything.
Yeah, it's
but he is. When he got his 1 pole position in Turkey, it was in the wet.
Oh, so Russell took a 2-place grid penalty.
Oh, that's impeding. Right. That's impeding in the. Was it in the pit lane?
Yeah. So that was another thing this weekend because they changed the rules after last weekend about where the cars can stall in order to build a little bit of a gap on the track for them to go out. So last week in Mexico, a lot of the drivers were doing it at the exit of the pit lane, and then they changed that rule as to that they can only do it on like the pit exit, or like making it so that their only real place for them to do it was on the pit exit. So that's where you saw like a couple of cars going slow, and then Max going around on the outside,
and overtaking
everybody. Yeah,
that was funny looking. It almost looked like he was avoiding a giant accident.
Yeah, well, I mean, just the thing, it just seemed like it was more chaotic than it was when they had it on the pit exit. So I don't know. They keep changing the rules, trying to make this better for everybody. I understand they don't want people driving slow on the track, so trying to figure out a way to allow them to do this in the pit lane where it doesn't cause too much chaos. I think is probably the best move, but I think maybe there still could be a better solution to it. But
maybe upping the pit lane speed a little bit, so they can
exit maybe or something.
They can get up to speed quicker. I don't know.
I don't know. It's complicated, but yeah. So a couple of people got screwed with not having the ability to get in a second lap.
Yeah, I don't know what McLaren is thinking, and I'm not going to try and outthink them, but this is the second week in a row that they put Lando out late, or took a gamble on basically trying to save fresh tires for the race. By having Lando do limited number of laps and then getting caught out by either a yellow flag or red flag for racing conditions. But 2 weeks in a row. God damn.
Yeah, and I mean, they didn't even run soft tires or anything in practice, so they knew they had the pace and really were trying to conserve and capitalize on qualifying. And didn't really work out for them. But in the sprint, Lando actually qualified on pole for in the sprint shootout, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, surprising to himself. I don't know if you heard his radio. He was like, "Wow, really?"
Yeah. Well, I think most people were kind of surprised by their actual lap time because I think I forget what exactly the conditions that were happening at the time, but I remember Max saying too that he felt like it was like one of the slowest laps he had done in the whole like little sprint.
I wonder if it was just wind.
Yeah, maybe something like that. But anyways, we saw at the sprint start, Max, even though Lando had the pole position to start from, Max, before they even got to turn 1, was able to make the move.
He got a really quick jump on him, and yeah, I think Lando might have got a little bit of wheel spin because he didn't have, by the time he was able to try and fend off Max, it was just too late.
Yeah. When I was first watching it, I was like, man, Lando, not again. Like, going too easy on him. But then rewatching it, I was like, yeah, he really didn't have anything that he could do there. So,
yeah. I mean, I say this a lot, but I do not like having P1 be on the outside, and that's the way it's set up at, if not all, then at least most tracks. It seems like P2 is the most conducive to your race start at most F1 tracks.
Yeah.
No matter how much length they give you in between slots, it seems like P2 on the inside is the best way to go.
Yeah, just being on that side of the track definitely gives you an advantage. So maybe that is good.
Yeah. So he loses it out. Sprint race was good overall.
Yeah, definitely a preview of what we got to see on Sunday. Some great drives from a few drivers. Yuki getting up into 6th. That was pretty cool to see. Ricardo, his battle with Carlos was pretty cool. He was able to make the move on Carlos, but that was really cool to see.
I would say good weekend for the AlphaTauri team overall, right? Like their pace that they've showed from, what was before Mexico, from Coda to Mexico to now, it's only gotten steadily better.
Yeah, or at least we've seen the improvements be consistent.
Yeah.
Right? So
see their improvements come to fruition at least, more and more.
So they're definitely in a better spot. Not nearly the slowest car like they had at the beginning of the season. So
yeah,
good for them. Ricardo had a little bit of a struggle, like you said, in the race with Carlos. Williams just really struggled this weekend altogether.
Yeah, no real pace for them.
But more importantly, the Mercedes. This was the first glimpse of how bad Sunday was going to be for them.
Yeah.
Just both started, fourth and fifth. Russell and Hamilton on the sprint start, and then they both finished Lewis in 7th and
George in 4th.
So,
and those sound better than how everything looked, because they looked a little bit racy, like in tight with somebody in a slipstream and DRS zones and all that. But as soon as they hit clean air, the drag resistance on that car would just it was like a parachute.
Yeah,
way too much downforce on that car.
Yeah. Again, these sprint weekends really brings a big challenge for teams to get it right. Just within that first hour, Mercedes just
got
for
it
whatever
wrong.
reason didn't get it right. So
those 2 practice sessions, I think, are much more important than people were realizing, because there's been a pushback for practice to either get rid of practices or to stop showing them on the broadcast at least.
I enjoy watching.
I like watching practice personally.
Like 3 practice sessions, that's kind of a lot. I maybe sometimes skip the 3rd one, but in general on these kind of weekends, it's fun on Friday to kind of see where the cars are at, get a bunch of information about like what's happened in the week building up to this, and then kind of using that information to make decisions for fantasy.
I'm curious if there's going to be kickback from teams like Mercedes for the seasons to come, or at least maybe like 2026 with new regulations and all that shit, if they're going to push to get an FP2 on sprint weekends.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think with them wanting to do more sprints next year, might have to do something along those lines just to make it. But at the same time, it is kind of cool to see that challenge.
I like it, yeah.
But having it be like half of the races, I think is probably a bit much. But
it kind of sucks for Lewis and Mercedes as a total, because I think they're the heavily favorite team in Mercedes or in Brazil. It seems like a little bit of a home race for them, especially for Lewis. You had George winning it last year.
Well, I mean, he's a Brazilian citizen, so
yeah, he's an honorary Brazilian citizen.
Yeah,
they absolutely love him there, which is funny because he's got a lawsuit going on right now with Felipe Massa.
Oh well,
for the 08 championship.
It's not a lawsuit against him.
What is it? It's not against him, but it's an arbitration against his championship versus Felipe Massa.
Yeah.
Going to court with the FIA or Formula One.
Yeah.
Over.
And he was there this weekend. Massa was.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I didn't see him, but I believe it. I wonder if him and Lewis ever run into each other and how awkward that must be.
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
Yeah.
And maybe not recently, but yeah.
I do think Massa has a point to at least go to court about it, but that's for another podcast. But the sprint wraps up with Max Verstappen finishing in first.
Lando on second.
Sergio
with a 3rd place finish.
Yeah.
You love to see it, even
if it's just a sprint. You love to see Checo back on a podium.
Yeah, but yeah. So
rounded out with basically just an amalgamation of Haas's, Alfa Romeos, and then Williams.
Yeah. So onto the race. Ferraris didn't necessarily look that great in the sprint. Maybe like the fourth fastest car overall this weekend, but
Charles Leclerc does some Charles Leclerc stuff, puts it P2 in qualies to go back to Friday.
Amazing job for Leclerc to qualify where he did. Unfortunately, he does not get to participate in the race because on the formation lap, I don't know, remember what turn it was, but he ends up losing control of his car, going into the wall. Apparently, he had hydraulic failure. And
hydraulics failed him, yeah.
And then
same turn that he crashed on, I think it was last year. I don't know if it was pre-race or in the race. I'm pretty sure it was in the race, but another failure too.
Yeah.
Wasn't even his fault.
Yeah, so Charles, quote, said, why the fuck am I so unlucky? So I definitely was feeling it for him.
Do you think it's luck or do you think it's a Charles Leclerc thing?
I mean, something like that's completely out of his control. So,
that in that instance, yeah, but then he's also got, I think there's a little bit of blame that you can put on him in other areas. Not this one particular, but he's starting to remind me a little bit of Lando at the beginning of the season where he's just like, woe is me, chagrin 24/7. You know what I mean? Like he's starting to realize that things just really, really are not going to go the way that he ever envisioned them at Ferrari. And I don't know if you know this, but they're in contract talks right now.
Yeah. Ferrari trying to extend with him and lock him in for probably as long as they can, but definitely some confidence waning from Charles. So
if you're Charles, what do you do? Because when is his contract up? Is it this year or does it go to 2026?
I think he's 2025 at least right now.
So he's through next year, and they're starting contract talks. So if you're Charles Leclerc, do you see it out and go like, all right, let me sign a 2-year deal for 26 and 27 so I can get 1 year under new regulations and then a follow-up year. And then if you guys don't get this shit together, if you don't gut the pit crew and get me a real fucking race engineer who can give me some good strat, I'm gone.
I think that if they want to lock him in for a long term, that's going to be really hard to do. It's more like they're going to have to throw a bunch of money at him and they're going to have to promise a lot of things, but the likelihood of that happening, I think, is very slim. I honestly, I feel like what we're going to hear about is maybe a 1 or 2 year extension, and that's pretty much it.
That's what I think it's going to be. I think he's literally going to dip his toes in the water of the new regulations, see how the team looks, and then if it doesn't, he's going to call Mercedes.
I don't know. I mean, Charles is still pretty young, but he's experienced now. For him to, I mean, drivers in his position, I found it hard to see them signing anything longer than like a 3-year deal. You know, like I don't like the Lando 5-year deal thing. Like
that's a long time.
That's F1. A long time, and I think that's more rare than what I don't know we might think of it. You know, but.
I think we're used to that in other sports where they sign a long-term deal just to lock down a deal. But these guys, it's different because there's so few spots and they're all vying for a championship. You're not just signing a contract to remain employed. Every single one of them wants a championship drive. So
they want to be in a car that's competitive. And
exactly.
All that
so especially the shorter the contract, the more conducive it is to your career.
Yeah, especially when you're somebody like Charles who,
highly touted.
Yeah. Has the talent to go out there and get wins and possibly even a championship. So there's many teams on the grid which they would love to have him. So Ferrari,
he needs to relax. Though. I think he needs to go see Checo's performance coach and therapist or whatever. He needs to just get zoned back in. Go ahead. What about Ferrari? What about Ferrari?
Rough go for them this weekend. Carlos was able to bring it home. Some brilliant defending. Got a 6th place. But
let's talk. What were you going to touch on right there? Because I say we talk about the start of the race.
I was going to just trying to get to the
perfect.
Yeah. So going back to lap 1, before we even get to turn 1 at the actual race start, we see the 2 Haas's and the Albon's Williams going 3 wide. Unfortunately, K-Mag kind of gets pinched, and then hits into Albon, taking him out. They both go out. I think it was K-Mag's tire goes flying into the air.
It hit Daniel Ricciardo's halo.
I hit his rear wing.
Oh, his rear wing. You're right.
Oscar got, I think it was like the back of K-Mag's car, hit the rear end of his car.
That's actually really crazy to think about. That's a few, thousandths of a second away from Daniel Ricciardo's neck possibly snapping.
I mean, that's kind of what the halo is there for. Like his head may be popping out a little bit, but
You don't think it could have hit him hard enough? I mean, he's got the Hans device too, but that's happened in the past. It happened in IndyCar. I don't know if they don't have exactly the halo, but they have the windshield. I don't know if it was used back then or if they had the Hans device, but a driver got hit in the head by a tire and it killed him.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a scary moment for him.
It's scary.
At that point, the race was red.
Imagine Daniel Ricciardo goes back out.
Oh my gosh. It's 2 races at a time, and then he has to go back out. But yeah, so race is red flagged. Everybody gets to go back to the garage.
But before it's officially red flag. Lando gains, what was it, 5 positions? He goes from
he got
P7 to P2.
Well, he started from 6th.
He's 6 up to P2. So he gains 4 positions off that launch. Beautiful launch from him.
Amazing start for him.
Plus, I don't know where he was out on the grid. I think he's on the left side. So, yeah, he's on Leclerc's side. So there's more clean air there for him, too. Mm-hmm. And then he just basically gets to chew up an Aston Martin or two and then park himself right up behind Max and then clean start for him on the next restart.
Yeah, so at the next restart, just kind of sets off the stints for everybody. So we got to see Lando following behind it with Max. About lap 9, Lando puts the pressure on and actually goes for a couple attempts to pass Max. At this time, you and me are jumping up and down screaming. Just so stoked to see
it looked like
anybody and go and like try to give it to Max. This was especially that early.
Yeah, this was maybe the first time all season, and it's crazy to say this at this point in the season with just 2 races left, but that might be the first time that we saw Max get truly defensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was probably a bunch of those moments earlier on, especially him battling with Checo and stuff like that in the beginning rounds, but
hard to remember though. It's been so long.
I know, that's what I'm saying. In this like last half of the season, he hasn't really been challenged much at all. So to see this, it's been getting tighter and tighter and tighter as the races have been going on. But like an actual like on track battles, Max has been pretty just on his own. So to see Lando just really challenge him early too, it was good to see. Yeah, it was questionable as like what the strategy was there, but it was cool to see them challenge. So
yeah, it was good to see, but then also as soon as Max realized that Lando has the power and obviously the capability of putting that on, you saw Max kicking into another gear immediately, and he started lapping by about 0.5 seconds a lap on Lando. And shortly thereafter, he was about 7 seconds up. So like it just goes to show that when Max wants to turn it on, he can turn it on. Even when things are close, Max is still a step ahead.
Yeah.
And it's the combination of car and driver.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, I think, for Lando because he finally has a sniff at, a true competitive car. That car is good. He said it himself. He thinks that McLaren actually does have more power than the Red Bull, but with the Mercedes power unit and their design. But up against the power that the Red Bull has, combination Max, it's so hard for Lando.
Yeah, and over a distance, the Red Bull is a lot easier on the tires. So over the one lap, Lando's right there next to him.
Right.
But you stack up 70 laps, then that's where you're going to get the 8-9 second gap.
Yeah.
So, albeit amazing weekend for Lando. Oscar, it's kind of rough. Him taking the damage first lap really kind of screwed him.
Yeah. He didn't have a great sprint either. He started P10?
Yeah, it wasn't good. I don't know if that's partially just him being out of sync, him not being as familiar with this track, but wasn't terrible, I guess.
Yeah,
still getting in there, getting a point for the team. I'll take it.
I was thinking about that. We, myself included, have all really highly touted Oscar as, Rookie of the Year, and I think he still deserves that. But we were maybe a little bit too quick to jump the gun because at every track where Oscar hasn't raced, Coda, Mexico City, and now Brazil, you're starting to really see the rookie in him come out where he's unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't tend to have the same bit of, rookie dominance that he's had.
Mm-hmm.
He's more middle of the pack. And that's just rookie things. It's not to take away from him, but it just goes to show how much experience can matter in a lot of these places.
Yeah. So speaking of middle of the pack, we saw the Mercedes starting from 5th, George Russell starting from 8th. Not necessarily the greatest qualifying positions, but even worse for them throughout the race, like we said. Just falling back throughout the race. They were trying really hard to defend against Perez, against Carlos. Him and George had some more battles, but yeah, Mercedes. Like, if you're looking forward to the rest of the year, like, is there anything to look forward to, or do you just kind of? Are you?
I think they bounce back in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I think. What were Lewis's comments? Like, he's just ready to be over this year and ready to look forward to the next car. Like,
which is crazy because he's still like 40 points out. I mean, Checo took a nice chunk out of Lewis's gain, whatever you want to call it, on him, but Lewis is still close to P2. Mm-hmm. So for him to be throwing in the towel, I think is crazy. I think that's just a little bit of what Lewis does until there's like brighter horizons. Like when things go bad at Mercedes, Lewis tends to be a little bit of a baby.
Yeah, I mean,
like I don't know if you remember Spain a year or two ago when Lewis started he was like P19, ends up finishing like P5 or P3.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like with Lewis, you can only take what he says on the radio during a race with
a grain of salt.
Yeah. So because a lot of times when he does that, and he ends up coming out with great performance, you kind of realize, a
little sandbag.
Maybe not sandbag, or you're trying to throw people off, trying to get them to go take a pit stop when they don't really need to, certain things like that. So it's a little bit of strategy on his part, but yes, been very vocal after the races, talking about the car, trying to remain optimistic, but especially when they've had like two pretty good finishes before this weekend, right? Like Lewis finishing, was it P2 in Coda, 3rd in Mexico, like showing that they have like pretty good pace, and then just this sprint weekend, the 1 hour practice really screwed them. So maybe that's all it could be, but
not a good weekend for them overall. And then George ends up DNFing. I don't know if you caught why that even happened. I didn't.
No idea.
They just pulled him into the garage and I cheered.
I mean, there was a lot of just like mechanical issues for cars this week. I think maybe just because being at the end of the season, a lot of parts running towards the end of their life. Heat was a little bit of an issue maybe.
Yeah, that could be it.
Both Alfa Romeos went out.
Terrible weekend for them. Yeah. That was a missed opportunity by the TV direction. How do you feel? A lot of people are complaining about the TV direction overall, not just at Interlagos, but like lately. And a lot of it has to do with, late race, excitement going on and then missing it so that they can cut away to Max crossing the line and then cut away to the garage. But I didn't see the George DNF. I didn't see a whole lot. I don't remember seeing the Alfa Romeos. It was just sort of like, and now they've gone out. And then
I know Joe went out like lap 22, like super early. So tough for them, but nonetheless. So it was about around lap 30 or so, maybe 34. We saw the battle between Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso start.
This was the real race. Once we realized that Lando was Lando was running his own race ahead of him, Max was running his own race. I had hopes, for something to happen there, but this is what made Interlagos. Interlagos was these two, Fernando and Checo.
Yeah, it didn't really heat up until maybe the last 15 laps or so, but it was just probably some of the greatest driving of the year. One of the best battles, I think, of the year was get to see them going back and forth. Checo just, I think maybe for a little while playing it cool, not trying to be too aggressive. I mean, we've seen a few moments from him recently where he just getting a little overzealous, setting it too hard on the inside and ends up ruining his race. So
it's almost funny because I have harped on Checo for going too hard at the wrong time, and then he plays it cool. He goes the safe route, and now I'm sitting here like, why the fuck didn't you go earlier?
I mean, you could see where at a certain point he was like charging his battery, and then I think,
but then by the end it was gone.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like Fernando was just able to just mount a great defense. He was apparently changing his lines from lap to lap, changing where he used his ERS boost just to throw off Sergio, just to maybe confuse him, allow him not to be able to set up the right turn, not so that he couldn't anticipate where Fernando was going.
Just doing like very non-traditional driving, which is a brilliant defense. I wonder how often he uses that type of a thing, because we've seen him do some amazing defensive driving, like when he basically won the race for Ocon in Hungary a couple years ago. Wonder if he was kind of using the same sort of wild tactics, but I mean that just goes to show that old dog still has a lot of just race smart in him,
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's why one of the reasons why I love Formula One is because you get to see that type of racing displayed, right? You get to see a guy that's been around for a long time and has won some championships just going out there and like racing clean, racing hard, and putting on a great show. And it was really cool to see. And I think sucks for Checo that this circuit, there's only maybe two places you can really pass. It's turn 1 and turn 4. And the way it was set up, he got back in front of Alonso going into turn 1, and then you only have a couple turns in order to set up to build a gap so that he can't be in your DRS going into the next turn 4.
Yeah,
so
the DRS zones are back to back. That was
in the front there.
Yeah. Some people don't like it. I think it makes Interlagos what it is having those right there. A little bit of controversy, and I had never really paid too much attention to this. I'd kind of noticed it, but never thought too much into it. Some people are saying that should the finish line be moved up to the starting line, Checo should have won that position.
Or he would have, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he would have, timing-wise, but the way it's set up is there's a starting line, and then at the back of the grid is the finishing line. Theoretically, shouldn't the finish line be the starting line? Because you have this gap in between the two that's sort of international waters.
You would think that would be the way to do it, but there's a lot of tracks where it's not the case.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know.
That's interesting. I don't know if every track is the same.
Maybe it's where the last car is. So that
I believe that's where it's at.
So that there's like the cars in the back are not having to technically go a longer distance or something. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah. Anyways, like we said, that battle came down to the last lap.
Literally, it was 0.053 seconds apart.
Yeah, so 5 thousandths. Just one of the greatest photo finishes of this recent.
I thought for a second, Checo got it, because he actually he got great exits out of those last few corners to try and catch Fernando. I thought he got it on the line, but it was so close. But I mean, the battle between them was all time, trading places in the DRS 2 or 3 times on the very last lap. Fernando's amazing defensive efforts, and then brings it home, and then a big hug between the two of them at the end of the race.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, that's what you want to see. You want to see that sportsmanship. Checo, I mean, that podium was huge for both drivers. Right. It would have been huge for both drivers, right? So sucks for Checo to miss out, but for him to just go through that battle and to keep it cool and to really bring it home in fourth the way he did, I think is a great weekend for him.
It's actually probably really good for him to get a nice battle like that in. Whether he loses it, but it's not like he really lost. It was a 0.053 seconds away. So like a tight battle.
Yeah, one more lap and he could have
one more lap and it was done.
Yeah.
We all thought it was over when he passed Fernando in the DRS about halfway through the last lap, but Fernando just dogged it out and got him back. Beautiful. Yeah, just great.
So with Alonso securing the podium, and we got to see Lance Stroll finishing in 5th. Does that mean
he had a little pep in his step this weekend?
Yeah. So does that mean we can dispel some of the Lance rumors, and we can say maybe Aston's back?
I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. Like, you could say, people could look at the Fernando Alonso and Checo battle as like, man, Checo really should have had that. He's in the faster car. He's in the Red Bull. But that Aston Martin looked great, and it was a great drive from Fernando Alonso. To say that the Aston is back completely, I don't know. We need one more look at it, but they definitely look better. And there's a big shift in both of their attitudes, particularly Lance Stroll.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that dispels the rumors of, Lance Stroll's exit or what, but he spoke to media and he drove in a way that we haven't seen him drive since pre-Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like a completely different guy.
Yeah, and I feel like some of that is just confidence with the car, right? Where
Maybe.
They feel like especially after the sprint was pretty decent, knowing that he qualified in 3rd, I think that definitely helped him just going into the race.
Yeah.
Being more confident and just feeling like he's doing a good job, right? So,
yeah. I, for one, really, really hope that they're back, just so that going into the last 2 races of this season, we can get another 4-team fight between, hopefully the Mercedes comes back, but hopefully, Red Bull, McLaren, I think are going to be on pace. But if the Aston Martin's there and the Mercedes can get themselves back up, I don't think Ferrari's going to do too much outside of, a great one lap from both of them.
Yeah. So right now, Aston is 21 points behind McLaren for 4th. So
wow, so they can really put in another bid if they get things going, and if Oscar stays in the form that he's in, that's going to be close. That's going to be a fun battle to watch for the remaining two
and then
races.
we got a 20-point difference between Mercedes and Ferrari. So,
and for Mercedes is leading that.
Yeah. So it's Mercedes to lose in the as far as I'm concerned. So
that's going to be nice. So the season's not all, not quite over the way that we're led to believe, with Max and Red Bull dominating the way they have.
Speaking of Ferrari, where do you think Charles would have finished?
Man, where did Carlos finish?
6th.
I think Chuck probably. Jeez, that would have changed the race completely.
Yeah, but
because I'm thinking 4th or 5th.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking they didn't have quite the same pace that the Astons or the Red Bulls had, so I feel like they're probably either 6 and 7, or 5th and 6th, and maybe getting ahead of Lance or something.
Maybe it would have changed the race altogether. So I kind of got to be like, as sad as it is, thank God that Charles Leclerc had that hydraulic failure, or we wouldn't have gotten the Fernando Alonso and Sergio Perez battle.
Well, so recapping our predictions for the weekend, you said no Williams into Q3, and sure enough, I don't think
there weren't.
No, so it's 1 point for you, Max. You had Max not winning the race, which, hey,
I tried.
You tried. So DR in the points. I don't know. Did he? I don't think he did, because he struggled.
Daniel Ricciardo finished
13th. So
13th. What about in the sprint? Would sprint points count?
Oh, actually, it would count. But he got 9th, so one
Dude,
position out of points.
And that was after the battle with
Carlos.
With Carlos, he finished. God, he finished point. Jeez, I don't even know, what was that point? I can't even do the math. 2 seconds behind him.
Yeah. So I had a Lewis podium, which didn't happen. I had Lando podium,
which did happen. Wow, bold.
And then Yuki clean sweep, and
he did, right?
I think he did.
He did.
Good on you, mate.
All right, let's do props and flops, and then fantasy recap.
Okay. Who's your big?
How do you want to do props and flops? Do you want to do it unlimited, or do you want to do?
I mean, you can. I feel like you can play fast and loose with it. You can give out a few. You can give out just one.
I got 2 props. Aston Martin.
As a whole.
Props to you guys. And then props to Checo for getting a little bit of a recovery drive, in here. And then, maybe getting a little bit of his mojo back after having a really, really, really bad weekend in Mexico. And I guess you could say props to Lando on jumping 4 places off the line and kind of saving your weekend there.
Yeah.
And then, kind of putting in potentially a little bit of a bid for the win, but not really.
Yeah, I would agree with all 3 of those props.
Do you have any others?
Not really.
You almost got to give a little bit, like some props to Logan Sargent. He was just outside the points.
Yeah. But, there was also like 6 or 7 cars that went out. So I feel like...
was it 4 or 5 cars?
5, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I guess good for you, Logan. But, I know he personally wish he had a better weekend, so...
He was pretty chipper in the post-race interview, but that's just... You're probably right. It's just because those cars went out. Otherwise, he would have been...
And that's basically what he said. He was like, didn't really feel that great about himself. So,
I got a lot of flops. How about you?
I think biggest flop, just Mercedes as a whole.
That's my number one.
Just, you guys can't be screwing it up like that.
Yeah.
Like, I understand it's a sprint and it's tough, but it just shows that this has been a running theme think, throughout the year, right? So,
that was my number one.
Yeah.
So to quote Gunther Steiner, you have to be better. I have, and I kind of want to rescind this, but I put Charles Leclerc as a flop. Kind of not his fault, but he needs to get that rain cloud away from him. And then Alfa Romeo, big flop, double DNF. Then I have Oscar Piastri as a flop. Middle and back of the pack a little bit for the entire weekend. Meanwhile, your teammate is running in P2. There was a moment, I forget which race it was. I don't remember if it was a sprint or if it was the Grand Prix, but he was running P19 while Lando was in second. A lot of that could have probably been pit strategy, but to be there when your teammate is running in pit P2, that's a terrible look.
You're talking about the race?
I don't remember which one it was.
Well, see, in the race, he took damage on the first lap, so I can't really... I can't really base anything off of what happened in the race on him. So
flop. But I have a question.
Sure.
Prop or flop for Yuki Tsunoda? Where do we put him in this? Because let's talk about Yuki for a second.
Yeah, I was hoping you didn't want to bring this up.
The AlphaTauri has suddenly become middle of the pack competitive. In Mexico City, it was good. In Brazil, it looked good for both drivers. And Yuki has gotten himself into these good spots, these cushiony spots. And then with no traffic around him, no other car in sight, he loses it and goes off the track. Twice in Mexico, twice in Sao Paulo.
Yeah, he's got
nobody around him.
Yeah, he's got to keep his head together. He's just getting a little too worked up, I think, in those scenarios, and he needs to learn to play it cool.
Yeah, it's hard to give him either one. It's hard to give him a prop because he drives and he gets him into a position to have a good race. And then in the race, he fucks it up on his own.
Yeah, I mean, he finished 7 seconds off of Lewis. I think maybe over the race he could have managed to...
He lost 4 or 5 seconds by getting himself out of the fucking grass.
That's what I'm saying. Like
2 times.
So he could have easily been 7th or 8th. So
yeah. I mean, you think about it. It could have been better. You don't know what kind of damage that put on his tires getting himself out of there. The lockup, whatever,
Yeah.
Man.
But it wasn't a complete disaster. So that's why I didn't want to include him in the flop. So, but definitely could have been better. He needs to cut out those mistakes.
For me, he's in a no man's land. Like, he's in between the two of them because he does have good race pace and good racing. Like, he was competitive multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Made overtakes, went wheel to wheel with a couple guys, but then fucks shit up. Even when he went wheel to wheel with one of the Haas's, he made a mistake and lost out and then had to regain all that time, regain track position. And it's like, that could have all been going towards advancing your position ahead instead of recovering. And that's literally nothing but his fault.
Mm-hmm.
Dude needs to chill.
Yeah, frustrating. So 2 more races left to go on the year.
Holy shit, I can't believe it.
I know it's crazy. We've hit, this is the 21st. Technically one race didn't run, but where do you feel like this one stacks up?
Man, factoring in a great sprint race, some qualifying drama with the rain and Lando be getting caught out. 1, 2.
I don't know if I can go that.
You think it's not better than Zandvoort?
No, because I feel like a good portion of this race was kind of boring. It didn't really...
From about 25 to like 45?
To like
60?
60 pretty much. So that was kind of a bummer.
Before we wrap, I want to talk about some strat that happened too.
And I feel like the battle, although it was pretty amazing between Sergio and Fernando, it was only for third. So the stakes weren't as high as, say, what like the battle that we saw in Singapore was, like a 3 or 4-way battle for first. That was pretty amazing. So,
and Monza for, what was it, second? Yeah. No, that was for third as well. That was for... Why don't we go... why don't we put it fifth?
I was going to say maybe 7th.
Really?
Yeah.
Then we're going to have to split the difference, I think, because I would say 5th above Monza.
Okay, so after Monza, ahead of Mexico.
Yeah.
6th.
I want to talk about the McLaren strategy. So Max Verstappen pits late to go for a new set of softs, and McLaren decides to follow.
Yeah.
When they had Lando on like 20-some odd old medium tires, Max pits, Lando's in first, leading the Grand Prix after that pit stop with 11 laps to go. I wanted to see McLaren take a gamble and just leave Lando out on those soft tires. I don't know why. It would have been a closer shootout to the line. It would have been a risk. Odds are Max would have caught him because he was outpacing by half a second or more on those soft tires, but it would have taken them to the line and offered a defensive effort, offered ERS, a DRS battle on old tires, granted. Odds are they lose the fight, but it gives them a much closer gap than to just follow suit and pit for brand new soft tires as well. The only advantage that they got was that Lando did get fastest lap. All right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he did.
End?
Yeah, I think he took fastest lap and got that extra point, which, yes, they want that because either way, the way they're looking at it is, we're most likely going to get P2 regardless. Yeah. We might as well take fastest lap. I say let the young man go for it.
Yeah, it's
Give
tough.
him his pie. Because even though he's doing well, he's looking like sad Lando again at the end of these races. Like, he won the sprint shootout, and then they ask him, Lando, how do you feel going into tomorrow? And he still is just like, I don't know. I mean, we still have Max and a Red Bull right behind us, so we'll see. Like, he just doesn't have the confidence. Let him fucking race, man. Give him the confidence to be like, we're going to put it in your hands. We're going to take a gamble, and we're going to let you just go for it, even if it's a risk. I don't know.
That would be fun to see, but I can understand why they want to cover off and protect. And
play it safe.
Yeah, but yeah,
come on,
I agree.
man.
It would be fun to see. But that Lando win is coming. I'm telling you.
It's on the horizon, whether it's going to be sometime this year, which would be goddamn sex, or early next year. But then if we're counting on it for next year, we have to be reliant on the fact that McLaren has a good package for next year, which gives me butterflies in my stomach to think about whether or not they're going to, I don't know.
I'm feeling good about it. I'd like to see what their, after the end of this year, what their earnings will be, and looking at the investment and like what actual earnings they got from it. Because I'm sure it's probably pretty good.
I think it's going to be a nice package, but I just wouldn't be shocked if they didn't put together a good one. I don't know. It just makes me nervous. Fantasy recap. Let's do it. So, rough one for old Chanster. I fucked up.
I haven't even looked at it.
You haven't? I shouldn't say I fucked up. I got boned in COTA because I had double DNFs from Lewis Hamilton and from Charles Leclerc because of the skid plate infractions.
Yeah.
And then this week, what did I do? I forgot because it was a
sprint weekend. So you screwed
it
up.
was a sprint weekend, and the timing of the lockout was I thought qualifying was at 2 p.m. our time. It was at 11 a.m. our time. So I was in the bathroom checking my fantasy team, and 11 hit, and my team locked up. I actually wanted to get rid of Sergio Perez and Oscar Piastri. Sergio Perez ended up getting me some nice points. Oscar didn't. Meanwhile, Susie Wolfstand account, she played her 2x chip on Lando and had Fernando and Gasly, who both surprisingly put in good races. Either way, regardless, I almost played my 3x on Max, which I think would have been the weekend to do it.
Yeah,
because it's the last sprint.
Yeah.
That was my plan, and I didn't get to do it.
Yeah.
So I lose out there and ended up coming in second for the week and losing the lead by 7 points. So as it stands right now, Susie Wolfstand account takes first place by 7 points over myself. Incident, you remain in third, down by 400 points.
Yeah, I actually pulled my limitless this weekend and stupidly picked the Mercedes.
I know,
and
did.
Ferrari.
Oh, God.
So I took a DNF on each team, and I had them as my drivers. So
I know you had Lewis, you had George, and you had Chuck.
I got the same fate that you had on your
pretty
limit.
much.
Yeah, so that's just goes to show how my season has gone.
Pretty much. That's a bad beat right there. And then strolling with my homies in fourth, Church of Checos in fifth. Let's Go Full Throttle falls down to sixth. J Money and KJ remain at the back of the pack.
Fun stuff.
2 races left. Not only are there a lot of positions on the grid that are going to be highly contested, and a lot of constructors championship positions going to be highly contested, but this fantasy league is going to be highly contested for a number of people. It's going to be tight.
Battle for first. There's a 4-way battle for fourth.
Yeah.
So it's pretty tight.
Going to be a good one. And I can't believe this, but the next time we see you guys, we will be preparing for the first ever Las Vegas Grand Prix. I remember when it was just a rumor, and then a couple months later, the ball dropped. They're going to be racing down the Vegas Strip. I can't fucking believe it's here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. There's going to be a lot to get into in our preview episode, but so we'll save some stuff for that. But it's going to be cool. There's been a lot of hype, and
there's been a lot of anti-hype as well if you live in Nevada. Either way, I'm excited about it. I know you guys are. I know the teams and the drivers are. It's going to be the biggest event of the year, so we're excited about it. But this has been the post-Brazilian Grand Prix edition. Guys, please remember to follow our YouTube, subscribe to it, whatever the wordage is. Share any of our content if you enjoy it. Let your friends know. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Check out our With Koji. Check out the merch, the tip jar, and send us some questions. We'll answer them on the show. We appreciate you guys. Peace.